I never knew that part of the path to going after the One Piece entailed going after rookies and lesser threats instead of taking aim at the people who actually pose a threat to you, your goals and everything you stand for. I'm being sarcastic of course, since I think there are pretty obvious reasons for this character's actions in this latest chapter, which I will get to later, but with everything that's been going on and that big declaration that Vegapunk made, each of these characters are going to do something. I say something purely because of Dragon and the fact that he said that they need to speed things up, so that heavily implies that he's going to do something. But I can't tell you what that something is going to be. Regardless, Shanks is the latest from that big spread to do something, which leads into the literally age-old question, because it's been asked since the very first chapter nearly 3 decades ago, which is, what is his goal? What does Shanks want? And starting with that first chapter, this idea came about thanks to the revelation of Luffy's true powers and the true nature of the Gum Gum fruit, which is actually the Hito Hito or human fruit, mythical zone type model sun god Nika, so it doesn't quite roll off the tongue the same way as Gomu Gomu no Mi does. But the idea was that he knew about this and was actually in the East Blue to give it to Ace, who is Roger's son, so Shanks would have thought that he would be the person to bring the dawn. I can understand why one would agree with this, because a lot of things seem to align, although one could ask, where did Shanks learn about the true nature of the Gum Gum fruit? You know, where did he obtain this information from? And the most simple solution for me is that he got that from Roger, which I will get to later. And on top of that, you can fit in the idea that Shanks stopped Kaido from going to Marineford not by fighting him but with information. Because we know the likes of Kaido and King had their own fascinations with Joyboy, and it was those two who were heading to the Paramount War. So what if that was their initial reason for going, and Shanks told them that Ace is not going to be the one to bring the dawn, Ace isn't Joyboy, with Shanks obviously knowing that because it was Luffy who ate the fruit. And this does make me wonder, in that one meeting that him and Ace had, if Shanks knew that he was talking to Roger's son, because I feel like Shanks is smart enough to have put 2 and 2 together. And from there, all that Shanks has done in the story, up until recently at least, has been related to him keeping balance in the world, which is in part why he is so heavily connected to Blackbeard. And that's the first thing. One of his main objectives is to stop Blackbeard, and if needs must, just outright kill Blackbeard, so he doesn't cause any more chaos. I think he's going to fail, but that's besides the point. And plus, Blackbeard isn't the only threat in the world, which is why Shanks can't directly go to Hachinosu, the pirate beehive. If he just dedicated everything he has to taking out Blackbeard and it goes south, then Blackbeard's kind of got free reign. Because at this point in the story, Cross Guild isn't messing with him, Luffy isn't ready yet, so there's just the world government still there. But all in all, Blackbeard has more power and control in this scenario. Which is why my idea of Blackbeard beating and maybe killing Shanks will happen around the time that Luffy will become the king of the pirates. So by that time, Luffy will be ready, so to speak. And as for those other threats that are there that stop Shanks from solely going after Blackbeard, we have the world government themselves. I don't think Shanks is secretly an informant for them. That would be, well, a trust order to pull something like that off and have it make perfect sense, but I don't think so. Think back to Marineford, Shanks stopping the war, it's all about balance, the balance of power. If Shanks doesn't turn up to Marineford, the remnants of the Whitebeard pirates most likely don't get away, and they are completely decimated there and then the war transitions to the Navy versus the Blackbeard pirates, because the sole reason that both sides stopped is because Shanks showed up with the Red Hair pirates. So if that war continues, think about the aftermath, the catastrophe. He had an altercation with Kaido before this, like I said, where they didn't fight in my opinion, so if Shanks doesn't show up to Marineford, that means he failed to convince Kaido to turn around and possibly lost an eventual fight. Then Kaido shows up to Marineford, and I can't really imagine how the One Piece world would be like after that. Although I did say it was only King and Kaido who were heading to Marineford, but still I think they would have been more than enough to deal with that version of the Blackbeard pirates. But essentially, Kaido and King versus the Blackbeard pirates versus the Navy. In such a situation, the 5 elders probably would have had to descend eventually, and I don't know, would Emu have had to intervene? Because the Navy, their main fighting force, would have been destroyed realistically. So yeah, Shanks may have unironically saved the world by stopping Kaido and showing up to Marineford himself. And away from the whole keeping the world in balance, keeping the balance of power stable, comes the main attraction that right now everyone, and I mean everyone, is gunning for, that Shanks made his declaration clear for at the end of Wano. Which is that he is going after the One Piece, but what does that actually mean when he says that? Is he actually going after the treasure because he wants it, or is he only doing it just in case it falls into the wrong hands? Because to me, there's nothing about Shanks that screams I want to be king of the pirates. And thinking back to when he and Buggy parted ways in Logtown, how Shanks didn't want to go after it and Buggy was disappointed in him. That definitely has something to do with whatever Roger told him after they returned from Laugh Tale. Because whatever Roger said, whatever made him cry, I feel like those words are the words that Shanks has dedicated his life to. All that Shanks has done since then has been at least in part dictated by whatever he was told back then. So back to speculation, my best guess is that Roger simply told him that they were too early and that there will be another in the near future who will be the one, with Shanks crying because that meant this entire journey across the seas through the clouds was not meaningless, but once you reach your end goal and you learn that there's something that you will never be able to achieve simply because it's the wrong time, that's not the best news in the world. And from there's the possibility that Roger told Shanks to help foster the next generation for what was to come 20 years down the line, or Shanks just took it upon himself to do that. And this is also where I would say Roger told Shanks about the Nika fruit. Maybe not directly, maybe Roger just told him a quick story about this person who fought with freedom and was made with rubber, and Shanks kind of just put the rest of it together himself, which led him to take things a step further and go after the gum gum fruit, which was the closest thing to what Roger was describing, and then taking it another step further, which was to find the guy who would bring the dawn, who he initially thought would be Ace but turned out to be Luffy. But either way, that's why he said what he said to Buggy at Logtown. Shanks had to prepare, he couldn't dive headfirst into things. And from there, he destroys Kid and the Kid Pirates who offered up their road poneglyphs in surrender. We don't actually see him take them, but I assume he did. We just never see it. And now Shanks just confronted Bartolomeo for burning down his flag. Here's the thing, Shanks' actions make complete sense in this chapter, and they spell it out for us. Shanks knows that Bart is Luffy's friend, and from this meeting I'm pretty sure Shanks can tell how dedicated Bartolomeo is. So without a shadow of a doubt, that poison was a test that Bart passed with flying colours. Of course, he wasn't to know that it was a fake, and after burning down Shanks' Jolly Roger, there was obviously going to be some sort of confrontation, retaliation, and I'm sure Bart didn't cause any major damage to this place apart from that burning, which is why Shanks let him off with just that, with just the test and letting them run away. Say Bartolomeo lived up to his name of the cannibal and just started eating everybody on the island, I'm pretty sure Shanks would have killed him, like he did to Kid. But with the apology and the dedication to Luffy, you can see why Shanks let him go. He just made sure Luffy's surrounding himself with the right people. And Bart is looking really roughed up, so it's not like Shanks let him go scot-free. But then comes Yasopp, and what he did, blowing up their ship, Shanks looks like he had no idea that Yasopp would have done that. That just confused me because he did that because of the burning of their Jolly Roger, but I feel like that was resolved on the island with Bart's apology and the fake poison test. So what was the need? We know Shanks isn't that kind of guy, and it looks like Shanks had no part in this. He had no idea Yasopp was going to do this, so what was the point? Up until then, I would have said that the way this section links to Shanks' goals, his wants, is that he's protecting his territories and making sure Bartolomeo is as dedicated to Luffy as he was saying, until Yasopp, and I'm a bit confused. Anyway, back on track. To top it all off, we have to bring in Shanks' family because his father, or potentially his father, maybe his uncle, is one of the 5 elder planets, and theoretically his brother, this guy in the silhouette who may or may not also be this guy in the middle here, is the new commander of the Holy Knights. The only thing is that I can't see how they fit into Shanks' story apart from in a flashback. Like, how would a plot thread of Shanks and Garling look like in the present story if they were ever to meet? I honestly don't think Shanks would care at all. And I see his story ending when Blackbeard kills him, which in my mind comes before the final war, leaving no time for them to interact, which is why I think it has already happened. When Shanks had his audience with the 5 elders, I think he met Garling and his potential brother during the reverie when he was in the Holy Land, and like I said, I don't think he could. Maybe Garling tried to lecture him, but Shanks would have just laughed, maybe said a one-liner like being a pirate isn't that bad, and walked away. That's it. And him meeting the elders and talking about a certain pirate who is most likely Blackbeard would be a part of him trying to keep the balance. But then that's only so if it was actually him in that meeting. What if that potential brother is a twin brother and that twin brother wanted to talk to the elders about Shanks himself? in which case Shanks isn't even at the reverie or in the Holy Land at all and doesn't meet Garling and his brother. I do not know, so let's just stick to the meeting being between Shanks himself and the elders. So they gave him an audience because he is technically a celestial dragon and they know Shanks' reputation and demeanor, so they agreed. As in, if it was Kaido, there's no way this meeting would have happened. Shanks is playing all sides to keep the world afloat, although the world is going to flood anyway, but who cares, while simultaneously trying to ensure that the guy who gains the One Piece and ultimately controls the power to decide the fate of the world is the right guy for the job and not some power-hungry maniac. So by the time Shanks is killed, he will have completed his goal since Luffy will have become king of the pirates. And he will have kept the world intact long enough for Luffy to be ready to liberate the world. It's similar to Dragon in a sense that Dragon can't venture out himself and fight because if he fails, the whole revolutionary army collapses since there's no one to take his place. If Shanks and his crew were to dedicate themselves solely to Blackbeard and they were to fail, chaos would reign because again, who would take up Shanks' role of maintaining this balance? Is there any other top tier character in One Piece who actually cares about that? So I don't think he is hiding anything. I don't think Shanks has any ill intentions. Simply put, he is just the ultimate third party.